All right, we're now live with Dirty Dutch Mantell for any fan questions.
Mr. Dirty Dutch to you.
Mr. Dirty Dutch Mantell. So any fans could write in questions. And one fan question we had was your thoughts on your scaffold matches with Bill Dundee.
Well, heights, I'm afraid of them, and they came up with this idea in Memphis without my consent. But once it was booked, I was more or less obligated to do it. I'm not a big fan of scaffold matches. You're limited in what you can do, plus it's dangerous. And of course, who had to come off the scaffold? Of course, it was going to be me. So, and the Mid-South in Memphis, they put it up. I was looking directly into the second tier. I was at least 15 feet off the ground. I finally went off of it reluctantly, but not a big fan of scaffold matches. Now, in the other matches, we would go to Louisville a week later with a scaffold match, and that scaffold wasn't too bad, it wasn't too high. I went to Evansville, Indiana, and the scaffold match consisted of a big 2x10 board ran across two regular ladders straddling the top rope, and some guys standing there holding it. That was the scaffold. So anyway, not a big fan of scaffold matches.
Someone's asking what your thoughts are of Buddy Landell. Could he have done better?
Buddy Landell could have been a star, a big star, and had a chance of being a star when they booked him against Ric Flair, and this was probably, I don't know what year this was, early '80s maybe, I guess. But Buddy always had demons. I love him to death, but he had demons, and he could have been as big a star as maybe a short lip star maybe, but he could have been as big a star as Ric Flair.
Was there ever any super hot ring rats back in the day?
Oh yeah, they were. They were. Oh, they were like women you see anywhere else. Except when ECW started coming around, the girls stopped coming. Because then it became hardcore, and that attracts more guys than women. Women don't like to see blood and guts and people getting stabbed, and that kind of turned them off. So one time, I noticed that in Philadelphia, because the crowd kind of turned all male instead of female. We used to go there, half the crowd would be females. Then all of a sudden, with ECW and the hardcore style, it just turned to male, and took a lot of fun out of it, I think.
You have a fan from London, England, asking you who's the most underrated wrestler today.
Underrated. I say of the current bunch, this is what WWE does, and I love WWE, and I think it's a great company, and thank God for them. But they have a tendency to like underutilize some of their talent. I think Jack Swagger was probably one of the most underutilized talents they had in recent years. And even though they're using Cesaro in the tag team, I think he'd be better off almost a single, I think. But that's just me. So.
Do you remember the 9-man match you had with you in the stud stable against the Rock and Roll Express and some other wrestlers? The question's already popped down, but...
Do I remember the what match?
A match you had where you were with a stud stable against the Rock and Roll Express.
I do remember a match. It was like it was a big show. It was in Kentucky. I remember that. Rock and Roll Express. And I think their partner was
Arn Anderson.
Arn
maybe.
Anderson. And I forgot the other team. I do remember that.
Who's your favorite wrestler of all time? Someone's asking.
My favorite wrestler of all time. Well, I met 1,000. So I would say Steve Austin, because I helped kind of mentor him in his early years. But if I have to watch somebody, I like to watch him because he's got a good interview and he's entertaining.
The Heavenly Bodies were the other two the guy just wrote in that 9-man match. He said the Heavenly Bodies.
Heavenly Bodies with Cornette, that's right.
If you could have one more match Who would it be against? Someone's asking.
Randy Savage.
Because you made the most money with him?
I just enjoyed working with Randy a lot. He was very intense, and Randy was in his own atmosphere. He was in his own stratosphere. So when you got in the plane with Randy Savage, you got inside that bubble, it was intensity. Loved working with him.
Who was the wrestler that went the furthest with the least talent, in your opinion?
I think a lot of them have. Right offhand, I can't tell you. I've had to pick one.
Any memories of the Blade Runners?
I do remember them. They came to Memphis, straight out of wrestling school in California. They were called America's Team or Team America or something. And I remember talking to them, and I managed them they weren't there long. I managed them about 3 weeks, 4 weeks maybe. They were jacked to the gills. But I told them, I said, guys, and the Blade Runner movie had just come out. I said, you guys need more of a catchy name or a memorable name than Team America. So I gave them the Blade Runners, and so we started calling them the Blade Runners. Because back in those days, they had no copyright laws, or they did, but they were hard to enforce. And so they became the Blade Runners for a short amount of time. But then Hellwig, he went to Dallas, and I think Sting went to Bill Watts' territory out in the Midwest. And so that's how they got started. But they actually got their initial start in Memphis.
Who came up with the Kansas Jayhawks name when you tagged with Jaggers?
Dusty. And after a while, I changed the Kansas Jayhawk. I actually changed the name. I wanted to change the name to like the Kansas Jackoffs.
Did you ever appear in New Brunswick, Canada?
I did. I think so. Nova Scotia? Is that?
Nova Scotia's right beside it.
What is Brunswick?
New Brunswick, St. John's, New Brunswick is the big town,
I've
Moncton.
been there one time.
Why did Vince go from putting you with Jack Swagger to Alberto Del Rio? Is it because you were getting too much heat?
No, I don't think so. To be honest, I have no idea when he brought me back why I went with Del Rio. Because history, one thing about wrestling fans, they don't forget the story. So me being with Del Rio made absolutely no sense unless it had a big payoff at the end. And I never heard of a payoff, and eventually it went zero. It started at 50 miles an hour, and instead of increasing, it dropped down to like 5 miles an hour. It was hitting on zero, so we ended it.
Who's the person in the locker room that can always put a smile on your face, even when you're having a bad day?
Well, I'd have to think on that one too. Because years ago, we were so tired from traveling all these ungodly miles, it took somebody special to put a smile on your face. But I would give you one, Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart, I don't think has ever, it's I love you, baby. Every time you see him, and he's always up, and he's always upbeat. So Jimmy Hart probably would be the one that could make you feel better.
Did Psycho Sid and The Undertaker get along after The Undertaker replaced Sid in the Skyscrapers? Do you know?
Oh yeah, there's no problem with him. No problem at all. That's all business anyway.
Who's better, Brett or Kurt Hennig?
Brett.
Or Kurt Hennig?
Inside the ring. To me, my personal favorite, I liked Kurt Hennig better.
What happened to your podcast?
That's an interesting story. There's this guy named Jim Beaver Motorsports, and he has a podcast called Down and Dirty. So a lawyer sent me a letter to Court Bauer, who's head of MLW, the podcast, I guess, that he wanted me to cease and desist of using Down and Dirty with Dutch because it would confuse fans in the marketplace. Now, Jim Beaver Motorsports is truck racing, and I have yet to understand how anybody could get confused about truck racing and professional wrestling. And mine is Down and Dirty with Dutch, which I have had since 1993 or 92. And if anybody stole the name, they stole it from me. But Kurt Bauer, he didn't want to go to court with it, so I didn't want to hassle with it, so I just entered it. I'm coming back pretty soon, though. I might call it First Down and Dirty with Dutch.
Worst backstage argument you've ever witnessed, other than, of course, the Brody situation?
No. Actually, I was in it. When I started out, I was in Savannah, Georgia. I was wrestling this guy. He had left and he had come back. And he was a champion when he left, but when he came back, I guess they were working him back to get back into the championship bubble. But he didn't want to wrestle me, and he just got mad at me one night and punched me, almost knocked me out in the ring. And he hit me twice. So I rolled out of the ring, told the referee to count me out, went back to the dressing room, looked at myself in the mirror, and it was this side right here, and it was bleeding. So I walked outside, opened the door, and there's a janitor's closet. I reached in there, I pulled out like a dust mop handle, broke it over my knee, and I went right through the back of the building, through the kitchen, to the other dressing room, walked in, I said, "Hey, motherfucker." And he came at me again. I put 14 stitches in his head. So, and guess what? He never bothered me again.
Someone says hello from Germany, and Kevin Nash had said that at one point you were traveling with Sid and the Sheik. Any stories from that time?
Oh, God. Yes, I do. But it's too long to tell here. But I traveled like 30 days with them because I was telling you a little earlier in WCW, I went 64 straight days without a day off. 30 of those days was with Sid and Sheik. And it was different, let me say that. The Sheik is different. Love him to death, but he's different.
Are you still a Clemson football fan?
I'm a huge Clemson football fan. Disappointed in them this year, though.
Do you think there's any chance that TNA could bounce back to what it was when you were booking it in its peak?
Well, there's no longer TNA. So they couldn't bounce back. No, I don't think Anthem could bounce back. No.
What do you think about Brock Lesnar?
Great MMA guy. Vince loves him. That's about all. And I don't know him that well.
Question from Texas. Any memories about the Dallas Sportatorium?
Not a lot. A few, but not a lot. Hot as hell in there. I know that.
What did you think about All In, if you even watched it?
All In was good. I didn't watch it. I saw clips of it, but I was there for the Starcast. I was there for the little convention, but I enjoyed it. I think the All In concept was well received, and I think it surprised them that they sold out the building. And aren't they also having Madison Square Garden in November?
I think it's Ring of Honor, yeah,
Ring of Honor.
with New Japan.
And I think they'll do well.
Thoughts
Because
on?
there's a market for a big event market out there, and Madison Square Garden is a great place to hold it.
Thoughts on Roman Reigns?
I like him.
Any memories of my hometown of Chattanooga, Tennessee?
I love Chattanooga. Great wrestling town. I liked the building in Chattanooga. I liked the way it was laid out. The people were right on top of you. In Chattanooga, a lot of people don't know this, but we did an individual show just for Chattanooga every Saturday afternoon. And it was designed exclusively for the Chattanooga market, which is, you're just promoting one show. And I never saw Chattanooga sold out ever, but when I wrestled Randy Savage, I mentioned him a while ago, we came close to and selling the place out.
Do you have any stories about Smoky Mountain when they would come to Gallery Furniture Parking Lot in Gainesville, Georgia?
Never heard of it.
Who would you like to manage in today's WWE if you could manage somebody?
Vince McMahon. That's who I'd manage. He'd be the champion.
That's an excellent answer. And this is the last fan question I'm going to ask him because he's already been very generous with his time, over 3-hour interview here. It was a good, thoughts on CM Punk?
CM Punk? Well, I don't know him really well. I met him in TNA when he was first starting out. And then I was just on cards with him and the WWE. And I remember the day he quit WWE, I think it was in Chicago, I think. And I was trying to talk to Vince and couldn't get in there because CM Punk had him tied up all afternoon. And I wish him a lot of success if he has another MMA match. But I think he may have one more. Doesn't matter whether he wins or loses. He gets a good payday and he goes home.
And for the people saying about volume up, if you watch the full shoot, we're recording this with also HD cameras. So thanks for your questions, everyone. We're going to finish up our interview now.